I should have listened to Jessica when she said the sky looked wrong, but I never listened to warnings, did I? That's how I ended up waist-deep in the Atlantic at 5 p.m, with storm clouds rolling in like an angry fist closing over the horizon. "One more swim," Lauren had insisted, her blonde hair whipping across her face as the wind picked up. "Come on, we drove all the way out here. When's the next time we'll have a weekday off together?" She had a point. The three of them, Jessica, Hannah, and Lauren, were the only constants in my chaotic life as a freelance architect. Between my impossible deadlines and their demanding schedules, stealing an afternoon at this isolated stretch of beach felt like a small miracle. The water was warmer than I expected for late September. I kicked away from shore, letting the waves lift and drop me in that hypnotic rhythm I'd loved since childhood. Hannah stayed close to the shallows, always the cautious one. Jessica floated on her back nearby, eyes closed against the dimming light. I swam further out, enjoying the stretch in my shoulders, the way the salt stung my eyes. Freedom tasted like seawater and smelled like approaching rain. Out here, I wasn't Olivia Carter, daughter of a man whose name made people lower their voices. I was just a woman in the ocean, anonymous and unburdened. That's when I saw it. A bright yellow buoy, torn loose from somewhere, tumbling across the surface like an oversized beach ball. Without thinking, I went after it. Some stupid instinct to retrieve lost things, to fix what was broken. The current grabbed me before I reached it. One moment I was swimming normally. The next, invisible hands yanked me sideways and down. I kicked hard, trying to break free, but the water had other plans. My head went under, came up, went under again. Salt burned my throat as I gasped and choked simultaneously. Panic tastes like copper and feels like ice in your veins. I heard screaming, distant, maybe mine, maybe theirs. The sky spun above me, gray and indifferent. Water filled my mouth, my nose, my lungs protesting the invasion. I clawed toward the surface but couldn't tell which way was up anymore. Everything was cold and dark, and my chest was on fire. My last coherent thought was pathetically mundane. I hadn't finished the library renovation proposal that was due Friday. Then nothing. The restaurant had been a waste of time. Giovanni Brunarelli checked his watch as he stood from the corner booth, his patience with incompetent informants officially exhausted. 2 hours he'd waited for a man who apparently valued his kneecaps less than punctuality. "Let's go," he said to Marco and Tony, the two guards who flanked him like well-dressed shadows. They moved as a unit through the near-empty dining room toward the exit. The restaurant sat on a bluff overlooking the ocean, one of those places that charged obscene amounts for mediocre seafood and spectacular views. Giovanni owned a third of it, though most patrons didn't know that. He preferred it that way. They'd just reached the parking lot when he heard it, a sound that cut through the rising wind and the rumble of thunder in the distance. Screaming, high-pitched and desperate. Giovanni's hand went up automatically, halting Marco before he could open the car door. "Wait. Boss? Listen." There it was again. Multiple voices now, shrieking words he couldn't make out but understood in his gut. Someone was in trouble. He moved to the edge of the parking lot where it overlooked the beach below. Through the curtain of rain that had just begun to fall, he saw them. 3 women in shallow water, pointing frantically at something further out. No, someone. A dark shape bobbing limply in the waves. Drowning. Giovanni was running before his brain caught up with his body. Down the wooden stairs that connected the parking lot to the beach, taking them 3 at a time. His dress shoes hit sand, and he kicked them off without breaking stride. His jacket followed, dropped carelessly as he sprinted toward the water. The shirt would be ruined. The pants too. He didn't care. He dove. The ocean was rougher than it looked from shore, waves slapping his face as he swam hard toward the floating figure. Rain pelted the surface, making it difficult to see. He used the screaming women as a compass, adjusting his course based on where they were pointing. There, 20 feet ahead, a woman, face down, hair spreading around her head like dark seaweed. Giovanni reached her in 6 powerful strokes, grabbed her under the arms and flipped her face up. Young, maybe late 20s, lips already blue. He kicked toward shore, using a lifeguard carry he'd learned decades ago in another life. when he'd been someone different. Someone who'd had the luxury of normal summers and swim lessons. The three women splashed toward him as he dragged the unconscious body into the shallows. He laid her on the sand, rain pouring down on both of them. Checked her airway. Nothing. No breath. No cough. No movement. Giovanni tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and pressed his mouth to hers. 2 breaths. Check for response. Nothing. 2 more breaths. Chest compressions. His hands positioned exactly over her sternum, elbows locked, pushing hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another breath. He tasted salt and death, and something else. Something that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. She convulsed under his hands, turning her head to vomit seawater onto the sand. Giovanni rolled her to her side, supporting her as she coughed violently, her entire body shaking with the effort of expelling the ocean from her lungs. When she finally stopped retching and opened her eyes, Giovanni forgot to breathe. Green. Not the muddy hazel that passed for green on most people, but true emerald, bright and clear even in the dim, stormy light. Distinctive. Unmistakable. He knew those eyes. He'd seen them in surveillance photos. In files. In the face of the man he'd spent 15 years opposing across negotiation tables and territory lines. Robert Carter's daughter. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd just saved the life of his greatest enemy's only child. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw from seawater and coughing. "Thank you." The 3 other women arrived in a chaos of towels and sobs and frantic questions. They wrapped her like a child, checking her over with shaking hands. "Oh my God, Olivia, we thought you were dead." "I couldn't reach you, the current was too strong." You're okay. Breathe, just breathe." Olivia. Even her name carried weight. Giovanni stood, water streaming from his ruined clothes. He should leave. Now. Before they asked questions, he couldn't answer without lying or revealing too much. "Wait!" One of them, a redhead with tears streaming down her face, grabbed his arm. "Please, what's your name? We need to thank you properly. Can I get your number?" "Giovanni," he said, keeping his voice neutral. Just his first name. Nothing more. Giovanni what? Just Giovanni. He managed what he hoped looked like a humble smile. It was instinct. Anyone would have done the same. No thanks necessary. The blonde, the one who'd initially called him, wasn't buying it. "You saved her life. Please let us at least—" "I'm glad she's all right." Giovanni interrupted gently but firmly. "But I really need to go. Make sure she gets warm and sees a doctor." He turned and walked away before they could protest further, ignoring the squish of seawater in his socks, the cling of his white shirt to his torso, the cold that was finally starting to register. Marco and Tony waited by the car, both looking somewhere between confused and alarmed. "Boss, you're soaked," Marco said unnecessarily. "Drive." They didn't argue. Giovanni slid into the back seat, not caring about ruining the leather. The car pulled out of the parking lot smoothly, wipers beating against the downpour. "That was Robert Carter's daughter," Tony said quietly from the passenger seat. So they'd recognized her too. Of course they had. Good men, his guards. Observant. Loyal. "I know," Giovanni replied. "You saved her." "I know." "Why?" That was the question, wasn't it? Giovanni touched his lips, still tasting salt and seawater, and that indefinable something that had passed between them in that moment, when she'd opened those impossible green eyes. He should have let her drown, should have turned around, driven away, let the ocean solve a problem that had plagued his family for over a decade. One less Carter in the world would have made everything simpler, but he hadn't, couldn't. Even knowing who she was, whose blood ran in her veins, whose legacy she carried, he'd run into that water without hesitation. "I don't know," Giovanni finally answered, watching the ocean disappear in the rearview mirror. It was the first lie he'd told his men in 5 years. He knew exactly why he'd saved her. The problem was, the reason terrified him more than any enemy ever had. 2 days after nearly drowning, I was back at my drafting table like nothing had happened. Because that's what you did when you were a freelance architect with bills due and no safety net. You swallowed the trauma, ignored the nightmares about cold water filling your lungs, and finish the damn library renovation proposal. My apartment smelled like coffee and the lavender candle Hannah had dropped off yesterday, along with enough baked goods to feed a small army. She'd hovered in my doorway for 20 minutes, asking if I was really okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted her to stay. I'd sent her home. I needed space to think. The man who'd saved me haunted my thoughts in ways I couldn't explain. Dark eyes, strong hands, the taste of his breath in my mouth as he'd forced air back into my lungs. Giovanni, just Giovanni, nothing more. Like he was hiding something, or maybe everything. My phone buzzed. Jessica's name lit up the screen. "Hey," I answered, not looking up from the elevation drawings spread across my desk. "You sound distracted. Are you working? You should be resting." "I'm fine, Jess. Really. Liar." There was affection in her accusation. "I tried looking him up, by the way. Your mysterious hero." My pencil paused mid-stroke. "And?" "Nothing. I searched for Giovanni in every database I could access at the hospital. No matches for anyone who fits that description in the Boston area. It's like he's a ghost." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the October breeze coming through my cracked window. Maybe he gave a fake name. Maybe. Or maybe he's just really private. Jessica sighed. "I wish we'd gotten his number. I wanted to send flowers or something. He didn't want thanks. He made that pretty clear. Still weird though, right? Save someone's life and then disappear into the rain like Batman?" I laughed despite myself. "Batman probably has better things to do than fish architects out of the ocean." We talked for a few more minutes before she had to get back to her shift. The moment I hung up, the phone rang again. Hannah this time, her worry even more pronounced than Jessica's. I reassured her with the same practiced phrases. Yes, I was eating. No, I wasn't having panic attacks. Yes, I'd see a therapist if the nightmares got worse. All lies felt necessary when the truth was too complicated to explain. I managed another hour of productive work before my father's call shattered my focus. "Olivia." His voice carried that particular edge that meant disobedience wouldn't be tolerated. "Dinner. Tonight. 7 o'clock. "I'm busy. Cancel it." "Dad, I have a deadline." 7 o'clock, Olivia. Don't make me send someone to collect you." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, fury and old fear warring in my chest. Robert Carter didn't make requests. He issued commands and expected immediate compliance. It was one of the many reasons I'd walked away from him 6 years ago. But ignoring a summons would only make things worse. He'd proven that before. The mansion looked exactly as I remembered. Gray stone, manicured lawns, security cameras disguised as decorative fixtures. Money and power wrapped in tasteful New England architecture. I'd grown up here, played in these rooms, and hadn't felt safe in a single one of them since the day I'd overheard my father ordering someone's execution in his study. I was 21, home from college for winter break. The conversation had been casual, discussing murder like it was a business merger. I'd left that night and never really came back. A man I didn't recognize opened the door. Young, broad-shouldered, with eyes that cataloged everything. New security. My father cycled through guards like most people change socks. Hard to maintain loyalty when your employer might kill you for looking at him wrong. "Miss Carter, your father is waiting in the dining room." I followed him through halls lined with art my father probably didn't even look at anymore. Investments, not decorations. Everything in Robert Carter's world served a purpose. He sat at the head of a table that could seat 20, though only 2 places were set. Him at the throne, me relegated to his right hand. Close enough to control, far enough to keep at a distance. "Olivia." He didn't stand. Didn't smile. "You look well for someone who nearly died 2 days ago." I sat without invitation. "Your information network is as invasive as ever. It's called being thorough, something you might practice." He poured himself wine from a bottle that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Swimming in a storm. Childish and reckless. I'm 27 years old. I don't need a lecture on risk assessment. Apparently you do, since you nearly drowned. His gray eyes, so unlike my green ones, fixed on me with clinical assessment. "You're lucky someone was there to pull you out." Something in his tone made me wary. "It was an accident. I got caught in a current. And yet you walked away. Because of a good Samaritan who vanished before anyone could properly identify him. He sipped his wine. Interesting, don't you think? What do you want, Dad? The food arrived, delivered by silent staff, who knew better than to linger. Steak, roasted vegetables, potatoes that gleamed with butter. I wasn't hungry, but I picked up my fork anyway. Refusing to eat would give him ammunition. The Brunarelli family has been expanding operations at the northern port, he said, cutting into his steak with precise movements. My sources say they're planning to move into territories that have been O'Sullivan-controlled for 15 years. And that concerns me how? It concerns you because you're my daughter. My only child. The heir to everything I've built. I don't want anything you've built. That's irrelevant. He set down his knife. I've arranged a marriage. Liam O'Connor, son of my oldest ally. The union would strengthen our position considerably. The fork clattered against my plate. Excuse me? You heard me. I'm not getting married to consolidate your criminal empire. You did once before. Or did you forget? The wound was old but still tender. At 21, fresh with horror at discovering my father's true nature, he'd tried to marry me off to a lieutenant in his organization. A man twice my age who looked at me like property. I'd run instead, built a life from nothing, swore I'd never let him control me again. That was 6 years ago. I'm not that scared girl anymore. No, he agreed. You're a woman living in a mediocre apartment, working freelance jobs that barely pay your bills, pretending you're independent while I allow you the illusion of freedom. The words stung, because they carried truth. I wasn't rich. I wasn't particularly successful, but I was free of him. And that mattered more than money. I'm not marrying Liam O'Connor or anyone else you choose. Robert leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a problem requiring a solution. You think you have a choice. That's charming. I do have a choice. I'm leaving now. Before you go. His voice stopped me halfway out of my chair. You should know that all my business records are kept in the safe in my study. Financial transactions, territory agreements, names of everyone on my payroll, everything that keeps this organization running smoothly. I mention this only because you seem to think you understand how vulnerable you really are. It was a threat and a revelation wrapped in casual conversation. He was showing me his power, reminding me that I existed in his world whether I wanted to or not. But he'd also just told me where he kept his greatest weakness. I left without another word, my mind already racing. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and anger, and the beginnings of a plan I wasn't quite ready to fully form. That's when I noticed the SUV. Black, expensive, tinted windows. Parked across from my building in a space that had been empty when I left. It could have been nothing. Probably was nothing, except it followed me into the parking garage. I grabbed my pepper spray from my purse, heart hammering as I parked and exited my car. The SUV pulled into a spot 3 spaces away but didn't cut its engine. Didn't open its doors. Just waited. I walked quickly toward the elevator, keys clutched between my fingers like makeshift weapons. Every self-defense class I'd ever taken played through my head. Scream loud. Go for the eyes. Run if you can. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and jabbed the button for my floor. As the doors began to close, I caught a glimpse of the SUV's driver. Dark hair, strong jaw. Even through the tinted glass and distance, I recognized him. Giovanni. The elevator carried me up, but my thoughts stayed in that parking garage. He'd found me, followed me, was sitting outside my building like he had every right to be there. I should have been terrified. Should have called the police immediately. Instead, I stood at my window after locking every door, looking down at the street where his SUV remained parked like a sentinel, watching, waiting, protecting or threatening. I couldn't tell which. Maybe both. Lauren insisted on coming with me to the gallery opening. Something about not letting me out of her sight after the drowning incident. As if I might spontaneously decide to throw myself into another body of water. You look nice, she said as we climbed out of her car. That dress is gorgeous on you. The wine-colored fabric hit just above my knees. Professional but not stuffy. I'd spent 20 minutes debating whether it was appropriate for a networking event focused on historical preservation projects. In the end, I'd decided confidence mattered more than convention. Thanks. I'm hoping to connect with some potential clients tonight. The museum commission is looking for architects to bid on their expansion project. Always working. Lauren linked her arm through mine as we approached the entrance. Would it kill you to just enjoy something without turning it into a business opportunity? Says the woman who turned her hobby blog into a 6-figure marketing consultancy. Touché. The Meridian Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and industrial lighting softened by carefully curated paintings. Classical music drifted through the space, barely audible above the murmur of conversation. People clustered in small groups, wine glasses catching the light like jewels. I recognized a few faces from previous events. The Preservation Society president, a developer who specialized in adaptive reuse projects, several architects whose work I admired from a respectful distance. This was my world, or at least the world I was trying to build for myself. Clean money, honest work, nothing that required looking over my shoulder. There's the catering table, Lauren said. I'm getting wine. Want some? Just water for now. I need to keep a clear head. She disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to study the nearest painting. Abstract, lots of blues and grays, probably meant to evoke something profound about the human condition. Mostly it reminded me of the ocean, which reminded me of drowning, which I was definitely not thinking about tonight. Interesting piece, isn't it? The voice came from behind me, low and familiar. I turned, and there he was. Giovanni. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. White shirt open at the collar, no tie. His dark hair was combed back from his face, revealing the strong bones I remembered from the beach. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Deep brown, almost black, watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. You, I managed. Me. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. I was hoping you'd be here. How did you? The Meridian Gallery is one of my investments. I review the guest lists for events. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I caught his scent. Something expensive and masculine. Cedar, maybe, with an undertone of smoke. I'm glad to see you recovered from your ordeal. My brain was trying to process too many things at once. He'd known I would be here. Had arranged to be here himself. Was standing so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I never got to thank you properly, I said, finding my voice. For saving my life. You thanked me on the beach, while coughing up seawater. Hardly adequate. He smiled fully now, transforming his face from intimidating to devastating. What did you have in mind? Dinner? My treat. It's the least I can do. Dinner. He repeated the word like he was tasting it. I accept, but with conditions. You choose the restaurant, I choose when. That seems fair. And you let me ask you questions about your work. I'm fascinated by architecture, the way buildings shape how people live, how they move through space. This I could handle. Architecture was safe ground, familiar territory. What specifically interests you? Adaptive reuse. Taking something old, something that served its purpose, and reimagining it for something new. Finding beauty in what others might consider broken. The way he said it made me think he wasn't just talking about buildings. There was subtext I couldn't quite grasp, layers beneath the surface conversation. We talked for 20 minutes. He asked intelligent questions about load-bearing walls and historical preservation standards. I found myself explaining concepts I usually reserved for clients, surprised by how much he understood. He mentioned owning several properties in the city, mostly commercial, all requiring someone who respected their history while making them functional for modern use. You should give me your card, he said. I might have projects that would interest you. I was reaching into my purse when Lauren appeared, 2 wine glasses in hand and suspicion written across her face. Olivia, I've been looking for you. Lauren, this is Giovanni. Giovanni, my friend Lauren. Pleasure. Giovanni nodded politely, but made no move to shake hands. Smart, given that Lauren looked like she wanted to throw her wine at him. We should go look at the sculpture exhibit, Lauren said pointedly. It's why we came. Of course. I pulled out my business card, handed it to Giovanni. In case you want to discuss those projects. He produced his own card from an inner pocket. Heavy stock, simple design, just a name and phone number. Giovanni Brunarelli. Call me when you've chosen the restaurant, he said. I'll be in touch about timing. I took the card, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Electricity shot up my arm, unexpected and unnerving. His eyes held mine for a beat too long before he stepped back. Enjoy the rest of your evening. He walked away, and I noticed how the crowd seemed to part for him without conscious thought. People moved aside, nodded respectfully, watched him pass with a mixture of admiration and wariness. Lauren grabbed my elbow the moment he was out of earshot. What the hell was that? What was what? Olivia, that man is dangerous. I could feel it from across the room. The way people look at him. He saved my life. And now he's stalking you at art galleries? He owns part of the gallery. He said so. Convenient. Lauren steered me toward a quieter corner. I'm serious. Something about him screams trouble. You need to be careful. I'm always careful. No, you're always stubborn. There's a difference. We left shortly after, Lauren's concern casting a shadow over what should have been a successful evening. I'd made several good contacts, got 3 potential client leads, and reconnected with my mysterious rescuer, who now had a last name. Back in my apartment, I fired up my laptop before even changing out of the dress. Typed Giovanni Brunarelli Boston into the search bar. The results loaded. My stomach dropped. Giovanni Brunarelli, 35, suspected head of the Brunarelli crime family. Ties to illegal importation, money laundering, suspected involvement in territorial disputes with rival organizations, photos from charity events, always in expensive suits, always surrounded by men who were clearly security. An article from 3 years ago about a federal investigation that had gone nowhere due to lack of evidence. Brunarelli, the name my father spat like a curse. The family he'd been fighting for 15 years. The enemy he'd spent my entire adult life trying to destroy. I'd thanked him. Offered to buy him dinner. Given him my business card. And he'd known. From the moment he pulled me out of the ocean, he'd known exactly who I was. The business card sat on my desk, the phone number seeming to pulse with warning and promise in equal measure. I should throw it away. Block his number. Pretend the last hour had never happened. Instead, I saved his contact information in my phone and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of woman felt drawn to her father's greatest enemy, the kind who'd spent 6 years running from one dangerous man, only to find herself inexplicably attracted to another. The car arrived exactly at 7. Not a taxi or rideshare, but a sleek black sedan with a driver who knew my name before I gave it. Miss Carter. Mr. Brunarelli sends his regards. 3 days had passed since the gallery. 3 days of staring at my phone, debating whether to call him first or wait for him to choose the timing he'd insisted upon. Apparently, he'd made his choice. I'd dressed carefully. An ivory silk blouse that Hannah had convinced me to buy last year, paired with tailored black pants, and the only decent heels I owned. Professional enough to feel armored, feminine enough to feel confident. My hair fell loose around my shoulders, and I'd applied makeup with more attention than usual. The driver opened the door for me. Leather seats, subtle cologne lingering in the air, classical music playing softly through hidden speakers. This was a different world than the one I inhabited, where luxury meant a good cup of coffee and paying rent on time. My phone buzzed as we pulled away from my building. Hannah's face filled the screen. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound casual. "Where are you? I stopped by your place and you're not home." Meeting with a potential client. Dinner to discuss a project. The lie tasted bitter. Hannah had been my friend since elementary school, back when my biggest worry was passing math tests and avoiding the mean girls in 7th grade. She deserved better than my deception. "This late? Olivia, are you sure?" "It's fine, really. Just a working dinner. I'll call you tomorrow." I hung up before she could press further, guilt sitting heavy in my stomach alongside anticipation. The restaurant occupied a narrow building in the North End, Boston's Italian district. No flashy sign, just a number beside an understated door, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing unless you knew to look for it. Inside was a revelation. Exposed brick walls, candlelight dancing across white tablecloths, The scent of garlic and fresh bread and something herbal I couldn't identify. Only 6 tables, all empty except for one in the far corner where Giovanni sat, reading something on his phone. He looked up as I approached. Stood in one smooth motion, all controlled grace and masculine presence. Tonight he wore a navy suit with a crisp white shirt. No tie, top button undone. The casualness felt deliberate, like he'd calculated exactly how approachable to appear. "Olivia, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" The question came out sharper than intended. His mouth curved slightly. "There's always a choice. You could have sent the driver away. And missed whatever this is? My curiosity wouldn't allow it. Then we share that affliction." He pulled out my chair, waited until I sat before returning to his own seat. "Wine? Just water for now." A server appeared instantly, silent and efficient, pouring water into crystal glasses before disappearing again. We were alone in the restaurant, I realized. Every other table empty. No other diners arriving. "You reserved the entire place. I value privacy for difficult conversations. Is that what this is? A difficult conversation, isn't it?" His dark eyes held mine, unflinching. "You know who I am now. I saw the moment you recognized my last name at the gallery. The way your expression changed. No point in denying it. Giovanni Brunarelli, head of the Brunarelli crime family. My father's enemy for the last 15 years. Suspected head," he corrected mildly. "The federal government has yet to prove anything concrete. That's not a denial." "No." He leaned back, studying me. "It's not." The bluntness surprised me. I'd expected deflection, carefully crafted lies, the kind of verbal dancing my father excelled at. Instead, Giovanni offered simple truth. "You knew who I was," I said. "On the beach. The moment you saw my face. Your eyes, very distinctive. Your father has the same shade of gray, but yours are green. I've seen surveillance photos. And you saved me anyway. Would you have preferred I let you drown? I'd have preferred not being part of whatever game you're playing." Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or frustration. "This isn't a game, Olivia. If it were, I'm losing badly." The server returned with bread and olive oil, a plate of antipasto that neither of us had ordered. Giovanni dismissed him with a subtle nod. "Why am I here?" I asked. "Really, what do you want from me?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his untouched wine glass. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. "I inherited this life when I was 19. My father was killed in a territorial dispute with the O'Sullivan organization. Your father's people put 3 bullets in his chest and left him to bleed out in an alley." I flinched. Knowing my father was a criminal was different from hearing the specific details of his violence. I had a sister, Camilla. She was 14, terrified. The entire organization was fracturing, ready to tear itself apart or be absorbed by rivals. I had 2 choices. Step up or watch everything my father built collapse and leave my sister with no protection. So you chose the family business. I chose my sister's safety. Everything else followed. He met my eyes. "You understand that, don't you? Making impossible choices to protect the people you love?" I did. God help me. I understood perfectly. I was 21 when I discovered what my father really was. I said slowly. Home from college. Overheard him on the phone. He was ordering someone's execution like he was scheduling a dentist appointment. Casual. Clinical. "What did you do?" Confronted him. Demanded to know how long he'd been lying to me. He didn't even pretend to be ashamed. Just told me it was family business and I needed to accept my role in it. Which was? The memory still tasted like ash. Marriage to one of his lieutenants. A man twice my age who looked at me like property he'd been promised. My father said it would strengthen alliances, ensure the family's future, like I was a chess piece instead of a person. Giovanni's jaw tightened. "You refused." I ran, packed one suitcase, emptied my savings account, disappeared in the middle of the night. Lived on a friend's couch for 3 months while I figured out how to support myself, put myself through the rest of my architecture degree working 3 jobs, built a life that had nothing to do with him. But he never let you go. He calls it love. I call it control. He still thinks I'll come back eventually, resume my place in his world. The forced marriage idea came up again 2 nights ago, at the dinner where I followed you home. So he admitted to that too. You've been watching me, protecting you. There's a difference. Is there? I leaned forward, anger and something more complicated burning in my chest. You pull me out of the ocean, knowing exactly whose daughter I am. You show up at a gallery I'm attending. You send cars and issue invitations like commands. You follow me home and park outside my building like a sentry. What am I supposed to think? That I can't stop thinking about you. The admission came out raw, unguarded. That I dove into that water before my brain registered who you were. And by the time I realized, it was too late. You'd already gotten under my skin. The air between us felt charged, electric. My heart hammered against my ribs. We're enemies, I said. But it came out as a whisper. Our fathers are enemies. We're just 2 people trying to survive the legacies we inherited. The server materialized with the first course. Pasta with seafood, delicate and aromatic. We ate in silence, the food exquisite but barely registering against the intensity of everything unspoken. Tell me about your architecture, Giovanni said eventually. What draws you to adaptive reuse? The subject change felt deliberate, giving us both space to breathe. I grabbed onto it gratefully, taking something broken and finding its purpose again, seeing potential where others see ruins. There's poetry in it, like people. Maybe. Or maybe I just like fixing things. Can we be fixed? People like us? I looked at him across the candlelight. This dangerous man who'd saved my life, who understood the weight of unwanted legacies, who looked at me like I was something precious instead of a weapon to be wielded. I don't know. But maybe we don't need to be fixed. Maybe we just need to be seen. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The contact sent electricity up my arm, into my chest, pooling somewhere low in my stomach. I see you, Olivia Carter. Every part I've discovered so far. And I find myself wanting to know more. I turned my hand over. Let our palms touch. His skin was warm, calloused in unexpected places. A working man's hands despite the expensive suits. This is insane. I breathed, completely. He stood, still holding my hand, drew me up with him. We were inches apart now, close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, count the individual beats of his pulse in his throat. If I kiss you, he said quietly, everything changes. You understand that? I understand. He leaned down. I tilted my face up. Our breath mingled, warm and wine-sweet, the space between us shrinking to nothing. His phone erupted with sound, harsh, urgent, shattering the moment like glass. Giovanni closed his eyes briefly, jaw clenched with frustration. I'm sorry. I have to take this. He stepped away, answered in Italian, his voice dropping into tones I couldn't follow. But I heard the shift, from the man who'd been about to kiss me to the leader commanding his organization. Sharp, decisive, controlled. The call lasted 90 seconds. When he hung up, his expression had hardened into something remote. I need to go. There's a situation at one of the docks. Disputed territory. Potential violence. Your world calling. Always. He moved close again, brushed his thumb across my cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made my throat tight. I'll have my driver take you home, with security. I don't want you alone tonight. Giovanni, please, let me do this one thing. Let me know you're safe. I nodded, unable to form words around the conflicting emotions rioting through me. He pressed his lips to my forehead, lingering there. I'll see you again soon, I promise. Then he was gone, disappearing into the back of the restaurant, leaving me standing beside a table full of half-eaten food and the ghost of an almost kiss. The driver took me home in silence. A second car followed us. Security I hadn't asked for but accepted anyway. Upstairs in my apartment, I stood at the window watching them take up positions on the street. My phone showed missed calls from Hannah and Jessica. I'd deal with their worry tomorrow. Tonight, I touched my lips, imagining what might have happened if that call hadn't come through, wondering if I'd just escaped disaster or missed an opportunity I'd regret forever. The truth terrified me. I already knew which one it was. The week that followed our interrupted dinner became a study in contradictions. By day, I maintained the facade of normalcy, finishing the library proposal, responding to client emails, pretending my world hadn't tilted completely off its axis. By night, I slipped into Giovanni's orbit like a planet caught by gravity it couldn't resist. We met 3 times, each encounter more dangerous than the last. The first was at his office, a legitimate import business housed in a refurbished warehouse near the harbor. He'd invited me under the pretense of discussing potential architectural work. The building needed updating, he'd said. Historical preservation while modernizing the infrastructure. I'd believed the lie because I wanted to. His office occupied the top floor, all glass and steel with views of the water. We looked at blueprints for exactly 10 minutes before he kissed me against his desk, his hands tangling in my hair, my back arching into him. The kiss was everything the almost kiss at the restaurant had promised. Consuming, desperate, inevitable. "This is a terrible idea," I gasped when we broke apart. "The worst," he agreed, and kissed me again. The second meeting happened at a small bookstore in Cambridge, neutral territory where neither of our worlds held dominion. We sat in the back corner, surrounded by dusty volumes of poetry and philosophy, talking for 3 hours about everything except the impossibility of what we were doing. He told me about raising his sister after their father died, the weight of responsibility he'd carried at 19. I told him about building my architecture practice from nothing, the satisfaction of creating something clean in a world defined by dirt. The third time, we didn't talk much at all. His apartment, late evening, rain streaming down the windows. We moved from doorway to couch to bedroom with the urgency of people who knew time was running out. Afterward, lying tangled in expensive sheets, I traced the scar on his chin. "How did you get this?" "Knife fight when I was 22. The other guy looked worse. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. "I'm not a good man, Olivia. I've done things that would horrify you. I know what you are. Do you? Or are you seeing what you want to see?" I didn't have an answer for that. Lauren discovered us on day 5, a photo someone had posted to social media from the bookstore. Distant, but unmistakable. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, waving her phone like evidence at a trial. "Are you insane?" She didn't wait for an invitation, pushing past me into the living room. "Giovanni Brunarelli, Olivia? The actual head of a crime family? It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because I think you're sleeping with a man who probably has blood on his hands." Literally. The accusation stung because it was true. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me. Make it make sense." I couldn't. How could I articulate the way he looked at me like I was something precious? The way we understood each other's inherited trauma without needing words. The way his touch made me feel alive for the first time in years. "I care about him," I said finally, the admission feeling both inadequate and overwhelming. Lauren's expression crumbled from anger to fear. "Liv, please. You're going to end up dead. Or worse, trapped in the same world you've spent 6 years running from." "Is that what you want?" "Of course not." "Then end it. Now, before it's too late." She left 20 minutes later, unconvinced by my promises to be careful. That evening, Jessica and Hannah called together, their worry a 3-way chorus of concern that made my chest ache with guilt. They'd been my constants, my chosen family when blood had failed me. And here I was, lying to them, risking everything for a man I'd known less than 3 weeks. I should have listened. Should have recognized the warnings for what they were. Instead, I texted Giovanni that I missed him. The attack came on day 7, just after sunset. I was packing documents into my work bag, preparing for a client meeting the next morning, when I heard the vehicles pull up outside. Multiple engines, moving with purpose rather than the casual pace of residents returning home. Something primal in my brain screamed danger before my conscious mind caught up. I moved to the window, peered down through the blinds. 5 men emerged from 2 black SUVs. Big, professional, moving with military precision. They weren't trying to be subtle. One of them looked up, directly at my window, and spoke into a phone. My phone buzzed. My father's number. "You have 60 seconds to come downstairs voluntarily, Olivia. Otherwise, my men will collect you. Your choice." You can't do this. Watch me. You belong home, not playing architect in a slum apartment. Liam O'Connor is waiting. The marriage happens next month. The line went dead. 60 seconds. I grabbed my keys, my phone, considered running for the back exit. But this building only had one way out, and they'd planned for that. I was trapped. 45 seconds. My phone rang again. Different number. Giovanni. Don't come down. His voice was sharp, urgent. I'm 3 minutes away. My men are 2 minutes out. Stay inside and lock your door. How did you... I have people watching you. Always. Lock the door. Now. I should have been angry about the surveillance. Instead, I felt relief flood through me as I engaged every lock on my door. Outside, more vehicles arrived. I watched from the window as 3 more SUVs pulled up, surrounding my father's men. Giovanni's people emerged. 8 men in dark suits, moving with the same professional precision. Then Giovanni himself appeared, stepping from the lead vehicle like a king surveying his battlefield. Even from 4 floors up, I felt the power radiating from him. The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds before my father's man made a move toward the building entrance. Giovanni's men blocked the path. Words were exchanged, too quiet for me to hear. Violence hung in the air like static before a storm. I couldn't stay up here. Whatever happened next, I needed to face it. The stairs felt endless. By the time I pushed through the lobby door, both groups had spread out, creating a corridor of tension between them. Giovanni stood at one end, my father's lieutenant at the other, and I walked into the space between. Olivia. Giovanni's voice carried warning. Go back inside. Miss Carter. The lieutenant was a man I recognized from childhood dinners, now looking at me like problematic cargo. Your father wants you home. Don't make this difficult. I'm not going anywhere with you. That's not your decision. Actually, it is. I planted my feet, channeling every ounce of stubborn fury I possessed. I'm 27 years old. I make my own choices, and I choose to tell my father to go to hell. The lieutenant's expression hardened. Your father anticipated defiance. We have orders. 2 of his men moved toward me. I stepped back instinctively, colliding with someone solid. Giovanni's hands closed on my shoulders, steadying me, his body a wall between me and my father's men. She said no. His voice dropped into registers that made grown men flinch. That's the end of the conversation. This doesn't concern you, Brunarelli. Everything concerning her concerns me. The lieutenant smiled without humor. Robert Carter will be interested to hear that his daughter is sleeping with his enemy. That ought to expedite the wedding. Rage whited out my vision. Tell my father that if he sends anyone else to collect me, I'll go straight to the FBI with every piece of evidence I have about his organization. Names, dates, financial records, everything. Empty threats from a scared girl. Try me. One of my father's men lunged. I didn't even see Giovanni move, but suddenly the man was on the ground, arm twisted at an unnatural angle, screaming. Another tried to grab me from the side. Giovanni's people reacted instantly, a choreographed violence that ended with 2 of my father's men bleeding on the pavement and the rest retreating toward their vehicles. The lieutenant pulled a gun. 8 guns answered, all pointed at him. Leave, Giovanni said quietly. Tell Robert Carter that his daughter is under my protection now. Anyone who touches her answers to me. The standoff held for 5 thundering heartbeats before the lieutenant lowered his weapon. This isn't over. No, it's not. They left, engines roaring aggression as they disappeared into the night. The moment they were gone, Giovanni turned to me, his hands framing my face, eyes scanning for injury. Are you hurt? No, just scared. And furious. I was shaking, adrenaline making my voice unsteady. He was going to lock me up, force me to marry someone like I'm property in a business transaction. I know. That's why you can't stay here. Pack what you need. My men will secure the rest later. Giovanni, please. The word cost him. Let me protect you. Just until we figure this out. I looked at the blood on the pavement. At the building I'd called home for 3 years. At the man who'd just fought for my right to choose. The decision felt inevitable. Like it had already been made the moment he'd pulled me from the ocean. I need to grab some things from my apartment. Important documents. 5 minutes. I'm coming with you. Upstairs, I moved with mechanical efficiency. Laptop, phone charger, changes of clothes, toiletries. And from the back of my closet, the encrypted USB drive I'd hidden 6 years ago. The one containing photographs of my father's safe, digital copies of his most incriminating records. My insurance policy, should I ever need leverage. Giovanni watched silently as I packed, his presence both comforting and terrifying in its implications. Ready? He asked. I looked around my apartment one last time, at the life I'd built from nothing, now abandoned because I'd fallen for the wrong man. Or maybe the right one in the wrong circumstances. Ready. His car smelled like leather and danger. As we pulled away from my building, I watched it disappear in the side mirror, wondering if I'd just made the best or worst decision of my life. Giovanni's hand found mine in the darkness between us. I won't let him hurt you. I squeezed back, hoping it was a promise he could keep. The safe house wasn't what I expected. No armed fortress or compound hidden behind electric fences. Instead, Giovanni brought me to a 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb 40 minutes outside Boston. The kind of neighborhood where people walked dogs and kids played basketball in driveways. Ordinary, deliberately so. This is where you're hiding me? I asked as we pulled into the garage. This is where you'll be comfortable while we figure things out. 2 guards, both discreet. They'll stay in the converted garage apartment. He killed the engine, turned to face me. I know it's not ideal. Ideal would be not needing protection from my own father. The house smelled like fresh paint and new furniture. Neutral colors, comfortable but impersonal, like a high-end rental. Giovanni showed me the security system, the panic buttons installed in every room, the reinforced doors that looked normal but weren't. Planning for violence wrapped in suburban camouflage. The second bedroom is set up as an office, he said, gesturing upstairs. Internet is secure. Whatever you need for work, just tell Marco and he'll arrange it. I dropped my bag on the couch, exhaustion hitting me all at once. 24 hours ago, I'd been finishing a proposal in my apartment. Now, I was in witness protection. Except the criminal organization I was hiding from was run by my own blood. I should let you rest, Giovanni said, but he didn't move toward the door. Stay. Please. Just for a little while. He sat beside me, and I leaned into him, breathing in his scent, letting his solid presence anchor me. We didn't talk. Didn't need to. Eventually, I fell asleep with my head on his shoulder, and when I woke hours later, someone had covered me with a blanket and left a glass of water on the coffee table. The first 3 days blurred together in a haze of adjustment and anxiety. I set up my laptop in the office, sent carefully worded emails to clients explaining I'd relocated temporarily for family reasons. The library project needed revisions. The museum commission requested a preliminary meeting. Life continued even when mine had been upended. Jessica called on day 2. Where are you? I went by your apartment and there's police tape everywhere. What happened? I'd prepared the lie in advance, hated how easily it came. There was an incident. Some guys tried to break in. I'm staying with a friend until it's resolved. Which friend? I'll come stay with you. It's better if I don't say right now. I'm safe, I promise. I just need a few days to figure things out. This is about him, isn't it? That Giovanni guy Lauren told us about. Her voice carried hurt and fear in equal measure. Liv, please tell me you're not in over your head. I'm handling it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. I love you, Jess. I'll call you in a few days. Hannah's call was worse. She cried, begged me to come stay with her and her husband instead, insisted that whatever trouble I was in, we could face it together. I almost broke, almost told her everything, but involving my friends meant putting them in danger, and I'd already cost Giovanni 2 men in the confrontation outside my apartment. I wouldn't add Hannah or Jessica or Lauren to the casualty list. Giovanni visited every evening after dealing with whatever business required his attention during the day. We ate dinner together, talked about everything except the mounting pressure from both our worlds. He told me about the warehouse district property he was considering, how adaptive reuse could transform it into mixed-use commercial space. I showed him preliminary sketches, explained load calculations, and historical preservation requirements. We pretended normalcy while armed guards patrolled outside. On the fourth day, she arrived. I was working when the doorbell rang. Marco answered it, and I heard a woman's voice, warm and insistent. I'm not leaving until I meet her. Move aside. The woman who walked into my temporary office was stunning. Dark hair like Giovanni's, pulled into an elegant ponytail. Olive skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes that assessed me with the precision of someone trained to find weaknesses. She wore a tailored gray suit that screamed lawyer, expensive briefcase in one hand, and balanced on her hip was a small boy with messy black curls and enormous brown eyes. You must be Olivia. She extended her free hand. Camilla Brunarelli, Giovanni's sister. This is Thomas, my son. I stood, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. He's mentioned you. I'm sure he has. Probably told you I'd wait patiently until he deemed it appropriate for us to meet. She settled Thomas on the couch, where he immediately pulled out a tablet and headphones. I'm not patient, and I needed to see the woman who's made my brother lose his mind. I'm not. Spare me the denials. Giovanni's had exactly two priorities for the last 16 years, protecting this family and consolidating power. Now suddenly he's starting a war with the O'Sullivans over a woman he barely knows. She sat, crossed her legs. So yes, you've made him lose his mind. I needed to understand why. Her directness was refreshing after days of careful conversations. And what's your assessment? You're not what I expected. You're actually nervous, which means you care what I think. That's good. Camilla's expression softened slightly. I know who your father is. I know what this means for Giovanni, for all of us. But I also know my brother, and he doesn't act irrationally. If he thinks you're worth fighting for, I trust his judgment. We talked for over an hour while Thomas colored on the couch, occasionally showing us his artwork. Camilla was a corporate lawyer, specializing in business acquisitions and legitimization strategies. For the last 5 years, she'd been working to transition the Brunarelli holdings toward legal enterprises. Real estate, import businesses with proper licensing, investments in legitimate companies. It's slow work, she admitted. The old guard resists every step. They've built their identities around being feared, and they see legitimacy as weakness. Does Giovanni want out of the illegal operations? He wants options. For himself, for me, for Thomas. My son shouldn't inherit a criminal empire. He should inherit businesses that don't require armed guards and offshore accounts. She glanced at Thomas, love and determination warring in her expression. That's why I do what I do. Building an exit strategy, one property at a time. When Giovanni arrived that evening, Camilla was still there. He stopped in the doorway, surprise flickering across his face. Hello, brother. Your security is terrible. I walked right in. You're my sister. They know to let you through. Convenient excuse. She stood, kissed his cheek. She's lovely. Don't mess this up. After she left, Giovanni found me in the kitchen, making coffee neither of us would drink. I should have warned you she'd show up. She's protective of you. I understand that. She's terrifying when she wants to be. Like her brother. He smiled, the expression transforming his face from intimidating to almost boyish. Fair assessment. The peace lasted 6 more days. I was reviewing blueprints when Giovanni arrived early, his face carved from stone, fury radiating from him in waves. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, downed it, poured another. What happened? Shootout at the northern docks. Disputed territory. 2 of my men are dead, 1 O'Sullivan as well. He stared at the amber liquid. Your father sent word. Return you within 48 hours or he considers it an act of war. My stomach dropped. He's using me as an excuse to escalate. He's been looking for an excuse for months. This just gave him justification. So what do? I tried negotiating through intermediaries. Offered territorial concessions, financial compensation. He refused everything. He wants you back. Wants the marriage to Liam O'Connor to proceed. Wants to prove I can't protect what I claim is mine. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Storm moving in, dark clouds obscuring the sunset. The lights flickered once, twice. I won't go back, I said quietly. I won't let you. Then people will die. Your people. Maybe you. Giovanni set down his glass, crossed to where I stood. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones. I fell in love with you the moment you opened your eyes on that beach. I didn't want to, fought against it. But there it is, the truth. I love you, Olivia Carter, and I'll burn my entire empire to ash before I let your father use you as a pawn. Tears blurred my vision. I love you too. That's why I can't let you destroy everything for me. Then we find another way. The storm broke, rain hammering the windows with the same fury as the night he'd saved me. I thought about that moment, drowning and helpless, pulled from darkness by a man I should have hated. Full circle. Except this time we were both drowning in circumstances neither of us controlled. There might be a way, I said slowly. Something that gives us leverage against my father. Makes him back down without more bloodshed. What? I retrieved the encrypted USB drive from my laptop bag, held it up. 6 years ago, when I left home, I knew I'd need insurance. Something to keep him from forcing me back. I photographed every document in his safe. Financial records, names of corrupted officials, details of illegal operations. Everything. Giovanni stared at the drive. You've had this the entire time? I copied everything from the flash drive to an encrypted cloud account too. Multiple backups. If anything happens to me, if I don't check in weekly, the files automatically go to the FBI. You threaten your own father with federal prison. He threatened to sell me in marriage. We're even. I closed his fingers around the drive. This is how we end this. Not with more violence, but with the truth. Or the threat of it, at least. For a long moment, Giovanni said nothing. Then he pulled me close, holding me like I was something infinitely precious and terribly fragile. Your father will never forgive you for this. I stopped needing his forgiveness years ago. I need his capitulation. There's a difference. Outside, lightning split the sky. Inside, we held each other while the storm raged. Two people caught between impossible loyalties, choosing each other despite the cost. Tomorrow we'd plan the confrontation. Tomorrow we'd weaponize my father's sins against him. Tomorrow we'd find out if love could survive when it required betraying blood. Tonight, we simply held on. The Grandmont Hotel sat on neutral ground, a century-old building that had witnessed countless negotiations between Boston's underworld powers. Giovanni chose it deliberately. Public enough to discourage outright violence, private enough for conversations that couldn't happen in daylight. I dressed like I was going to war. Charcoal gray suit, hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup, armor disguised as professionalism. My hands shook as I fastened the buttons, and I had to stop twice to breathe through the panic threatening to consume me. You don't have to do this, Giovanni said from the doorway. He wore black, head to toe, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. I can handle the meeting alone. He's my father. This is my fight as much as yours. He'll say things designed to hurt you. To make you doubt yourself, doubt us. I met his eyes in the mirror. I know exactly who he is. That's why I need to face him. The drive took 30 minutes. Giovanni's hand found mine in the back seat, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say that hadn't already been laid bare in the last 6 weeks? We loved each other. We'd chosen each other. Now we'd find out what that choice would cost. The hotel's ballroom had been cleared. A single long table positioned in the center like a boardroom designed for bloodshed. 12 chairs on each side, evenly spaced. Giovanni's men were already positioned when we arrived, standing at attention like soldiers preparing for battle. I recognized several faces from the confrontation outside my apartment. Men who'd bled for me, who'd fought because their boss commanded it. My father's contingent arrived 10 minutes later. Robert Carter walked like he owned the world, flanked by men whose suits couldn't quite hide their weapons. He saw me standing beside Giovanni and stopped, his expression shifting from surprise to cold fury in the space of a heartbeat. Olivia, step away from him. Now. No, I won't ask twice. Then stop asking. I moved closer to Giovanni. A deliberate statement. I'm here to end this, peacefully if possible. Robert's laugh was harsh, humorless. You think you have any say in this? You're a child playing at rebellion while adults handle real problems. I'm 27 years old. Stop treating me like property you misplaced. You are my daughter, my blood, and you've disgraced that blood by spreading your legs for my enemy." Giovanni's hand tightened on my waist, the only sign of his rage. His voice remained controlled. "Careful, Carter. That's the woman I love you're insulting." "Love?" Robert spat the word like poison. "You don't know the meaning. This is strategy. You're using her to get to me. Believe what you want. Doesn't change the fact that Olivia stays with me. Over my dead body. That can be arranged." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. 12 guns on each side. 24 men ready to turn this negotiation into a massacre. I stepped forward, putting myself between the two men who'd shaped my life in vastly different ways. "Enough. Both of you." I looked at my father, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Not the powerful figure from my childhood, but a man so consumed by control that he'd destroy his own daughter rather than lose face. "You want me back so you can marry me off to Liam O'Connor, strengthen your alliance with the Irish faction, prove you still command respect. I'm a strategic asset to you, nothing more. You're my daughter. When was the last time you asked about my life, my work? What makes me happy?" I shook my head. "You don't love me, Dad. You love the idea of me as an obedient piece on your chessboard. But I'm not playing anymore. Then you leave me no choice." Robert nodded to his men. "Take her." No one moved. Giovanni's people blocked any approach, hands inside jackets, ready to draw. The standoff held, violence balanced on a knife's edge. "I have copies of everything," I said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Every document in your safe. Financial records proving money laundering through shell corporations. Names of federal officials you've bribed. Details of the Hartford assassination in 2019. The weapons shipment through Providence docks last year. All of it. Digitally backed up in multiple locations." Robert's face went white, then red. "You're lying. 6 years ago, when you tried to force me into marriage the first time, I photographed everything. Insurance, in case you ever came for me again. It's been sitting in encrypted cloud storage ever since, programmed to automatically send to the FBI if I don't check in weekly. You'd betray your own father? Send me to federal prison? You'd sell your own daughter into forced marriage. We're both capable of terrible things when pushed." I pulled out my phone, showed him the screen. An email draft, addressed to the Boston FBI field office, with file attachments clearly visible. One click. That's all it takes. Everything you've built, everything you've protected for 30 years, gone. Federal indictment, asset seizure, RICO charges that'll bury you for life. Silence fell like a physical weight. Every man in that room understood what I'd just done. Mutually assured destruction. The nuclear option in a conflict that had already claimed too many lives. Robert's senior advisor, a gray-haired man I remembered from childhood dinners, spoke quietly. "Robert, maybe we should hear what Brunarelli's offering. Stay out of this, Patrick. 3 of our guys died last week, 2 more the week before. We're bleeding money and men while Brunarelli consolidates power in territories we can't hold anyway." Patrick's voice carried the weariness of a man who'd seen too much violence. "Some of us are tired of war." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the O'Sullivan contingent. Not everyone, but enough to matter. My father's absolute authority was cracking. Giovanni sensed the opening. "I'm proposing a territorial redistribution. The northern shipping routes, the ones you've been fighting for, they're yours. More profitable anyway. Better access to Canadian imports. We maintain control of the southern ports, which we're better positioned to defend. Clear boundaries, no more disputed zones. And my daughter stays with me. By her choice, which you'll respect. After she threatened me with federal prison, you expect me to just accept that? I expect you to be pragmatic." Giovanni's voice dropped into registers that commanded attention. "War between our families benefits no one except the feds waiting to exploit our weakness. You've lost 5 men in the last month. I've lost 3, including 2 loyal soldiers who bled for me for over a decade. How many more deaths before you admit this is unsustainable?" Another of my father's men spoke up. Younger, but clearly respected. "He's right, boss. The northern routes are worth more. We consolidate there, strengthen our position, stop hemorrhaging resources on territories we're losing anyway." Robert's jaw clenched. You're all cowards. We're survivors, Patrick corrected gently. There's a difference. I served your father, and I've served you for 33 years. I'm asking you to consider that maybe, just this once, compromise serves the family better than pride. Giovanni pressed the advantage. $2 million. Compensation for territories lost over the last 3 years of conflict. Cash payment, delivered through whatever channels you prefer. Plus the northern routes in perpetuity, formalized through our mutual intermediaries. I watched my father calculate. The money, the territories, the end of a costly war, against his need for absolute control and his fury at being challenged by his own daughter. The scales balanced, tipped, balanced again. If I agree, Robert said slowly. She's dead to me. You understand that? I have no daughter. The words should have hurt, should have felt like a knife between my ribs. Instead, I felt only relief. I can live with that if you can. Fine. He spat the word. The northern routes, $2 million in compensation, and you never contact me again. Those are my terms. Agreed, Giovanni said before I could respond. Patrick produced documents from his briefcase. Legal papers that formalized the territorial divisions in language carefully crafted to mean everything to us and nothing to law enforcement. Both sides reviewed, negotiated minor points, added clauses. It took 2 hours to hammer out details that would reshape Boston's criminal landscape. Through it all, my father didn't look at me once. As the meeting concluded, as men shook hands with the wariness of former enemies agreeing to ceasefire, Giovanni pulled me aside. 3 of my people walked out. He said quietly, Vinny, Carlo, and Paolo. They think this makes me look weak, compromising for a woman. They're talking about starting their own operation. What will you do? Let them try. They'll fail without the infrastructure I've built. And when they come crawling back, I'll have made my point. His hand cupped my cheek. You were incredible in there. Terrifying and magnificent. I just ended my relationship with my father forever. You freed yourself from a man who never saw you as anything but a possession. There's a difference. Outside, rain had started again. Always rain in the important moments, as if the universe was providing commentary on our choices. Giovanni's car waited, engine running, exhaust ghosting in the cold air. I looked back at the hotel one last time, seeing my father's silhouette in the window. He raised a hand, not in greeting but in dismissal, an ending without ceremony. Ready? Giovanni asked. I turned away from the past, from the man whose blood I carried but whose world I'd rejected. Yes. Take me home. Home. Funny how that word had changed meaning. Not a place anymore, but a person. Someone who'd pulled me from drowning and never let go, even when keeping hold meant risking everything. The car pulled away, carrying us into whatever came next. Behind us, peace bought with truth and leverage. Ahead, uncertainty, but together. Sometimes that had to be sufficient. 3 months felt like both an eternity and no time at all. The truce held, but it was the kind of peace that required constant vigilance, like walking on ice that might crack at any moment. Giovanni lost 2 cousins in the aftermath. Distant relatives who'd been with the family for over a decade, but they couldn't accept what they saw as weakness. Compromise for love, they'd called it. Making deals with the enemy because of a woman. They'd tried to start their own faction, recruited 3 other dissidents, attempted to sabotage one of Giovanni's legitimate import shipments to prove he'd gone soft. He'd handled it with surgical precision. No deaths, but permanent exile from Boston. The message was clear. Loyalty meant accepting his leadership, even when they disagreed with his choices. The family emerged smaller but more unified. Those who remained understood that Giovanni's world was changing, and they could evolve with it or leave. I'd moved into his brownstone in Beacon Hill, though I kept my old apartment as an office. Clients felt more comfortable meeting in neutral space, and I needed somewhere that was purely mine. The separation between my professional life and Giovanni's world felt important, a boundary that kept me grounded. My architecture practice was thriving in ways I'd never imagined. Word had spread about the library renovation, and suddenly I was fielding calls from preservation societies and museum boards. The biggest coup came 6 weeks after the hotel confrontation. A contract to oversee the adaptive reuse of the old harbor building, a historic waterfront structure being converted into mixed commercial space. It was the kind of project that could define a career. "You're going to be too successful for me," Giovanni had joked when I'd shown him the contract. "I'll have to make an appointment just to see you. You own half the properties I'm redesigning. I think you'll manage." My father called once a month, always on the 15th, always brief. Business updates delivered in a tone so neutral it could have been a stranger reporting weather patterns. He never asked about my life, never acknowledged Giovanni's existence, never said my name. The first call had been the hardest. "The northern routes are performing above projections," he'd said without preamble. "Thought you should know the arrangement is working." "Good. I'm glad." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we'd never say. "That's all I had. Goodbye." He'd hung up before I could respond. Every subsequent call followed the same pattern. Information exchange devoid of emotion. A father and daughter reduced to business associates with shared history neither wanted to examine. I'd made peace with it. You couldn't force someone to see you when they'd decided you were invisible. My friends had been harder to reconcile with. Jessica, Hannah, and Lauren had been furious when I'd finally sat down with them 6 weeks ago at a coffee shop in Cambridge. 3 hours of tears and accusations and desperate pleas for me to reconsider. "He's dangerous," Lauren had said for the 20th time. "You're going to get hurt, or worse." "I know what he is. I'm choosing him anyway." "That's insane." "Maybe. But it's my choice to make." The turning point had come when I'd introduced them to Camilla and Thomas. Something about seeing Giovanni on the floor building block towers with his 5-year-old nephew, watching him be gentle and patient and utterly devoted to the kid, had softened their resistance. "He's different with family," Jessica had admitted afterward. "I still think you're crazy, but I can see why you love him." Hannah had taken longer to come around, but she'd called last week to invite Giovanni and me to dinner with her and her husband. Progress, however tentative. Lauren remained skeptical, watching Giovanni like she expected him to reveal his true monster nature at any moment. But she'd stopped actively campaigning for me to leave, which I counted as a victory. The formal peace agreement was signed on a gray December afternoon, back at the Grandmont Hotel, where we'd first confronted my father. This time, a neutral mediator presided, a man respected by both families despite having no formal connection to either. Former federal prosecutor turned private arbitrator, he'd overseen criminal disputes for 20 years. The ceremony was brief, clinical. Signatures on documents that would never see the inside of a courthouse but carried more weight than any legal contract. My father attended but didn't speak to me, didn't even look in my direction. Giovanni's hand found mine under the table, a steady anchor. Afterward, as both contingents filed out, Patrick, my father's advisor, paused beside me. "He asks about you," he said quietly. Never directly, but he asks. Wants to know if you're safe, if you're happy. Too proud to say it himself, but he cares. In his way. His way destroyed any chance we had at a real relationship. "I know. Just thought you should know the anger isn't all there is." Patrick squeezed my shoulder briefly before walking away. I didn't know what to do with that information. Didn't know if it changed anything. Probably not. Giovanni had kept his promise about legitimizing the family businesses. Camilla worked tirelessly, using her legal expertise to structure deals that were profitable without crossing into criminal territory. Real estate acquisitions, licensed import companies, investments in technology startups. The illegal operations hadn't disappeared entirely. They existed in gray areas I tried not to examine too closely, but violence had decreased dramatically. No more late-night calls about shootings. No more weeks where he'd come home with tension carved into every line of his body. The weight he'd carried for 16 years was slowly lifting, replaced by something that almost looked like hope. It was a Saturday afternoon, when everything crystallized into something resembling normalcy. We were at the house, the safe house that had become simply home. Camilla sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, reviewing contracts for a property acquisition. Thomas sprawled on the living room floor with coloring books and markers, creating elaborate scenes he'd narrate in dramatic detail. Giovanni and I stood on the small back deck, watching late autumn light filter through bare tree branches. The air carried the bite of approaching winter, and I'd wrapped myself in one of his sweaters, drowning in fabric that smelled like him. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his arm around my waist, pulling me against his side. How strange this is. 3 months ago I was terrified. Now I'm watching your nephew color while your sister works on business deals, and it feels almost normal. Almost? There are still guards watching the perimeter. You still carry a gun under your jacket. We're still living in a world where violence is always possible. Does that scare you? I considered the question seriously. Sometimes. But I'm more afraid of what life would be like without you in it. He turned me to face him, hands framing my face in that gesture I'd come to associate with important moments. "I fell in love with you when you opened your eyes on that beach. Thought I was losing my mind. Thought maybe I'd finally snapped under the pressure of running this empire. But you were real. You are real. The best thing that's ever happened to me. Even though it cost you allies, made you look weak to some of your people, I didn't lose allies. I lost dead weight. The people who stayed understand that there are things more important than reputation." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "Like building something that might actually last. Like choosing love over power." Thomas's voice drifted from inside. "Uncle Gio, come see. I drew you fighting a dragon." Giovanni laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Duty calls. My nephew needs me to admire my dragon-slaying abilities. You should probably mention you're on the dragon's side in that scenario. He doesn't need to know that yet. Let him have his heroes." I followed him inside, watching as he crouched beside Thomas, giving the boy's artwork the serious attention it deserved. Camilla looked up from her laptop, caught my eye, smiled. This was family, I realized. Not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd chosen, the one that chose me back. Later, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Giovanni and I stood on that deck again. Thomas had gone home with Camilla, and the house was quiet except for the distant sound of guards changing shifts. "You never collected your debt," I said suddenly. "What?" "That night at the restaurant. After you saved me. You said you'd collect your debt later." I turned to face him. "You never did." His expression shifted into something soft, something I'd only seen in private moments. "Didn't I? I got you, Olivia. All of you. Your brilliant mind, your stubborn independence, your capacity to love someone despite knowing exactly what he is. That's payment beyond anything I could have asked for. I drowned, and you pulled me out. Then I drowned in you, in this life, in everything you represent. You pulled me out of that too. We saved each other. Is that what we're calling it? Do you have a better term?" I thought about everything that had happened since that stormy night on the beach. The fear, the passion, the impossible choices and their equally impossible consequences. The father I'd lost, the friends I'd nearly destroyed my relationship with, the world I'd stepped into with eyes wide open. "Love," I said finally. "We're calling it love." He kissed me as the last light faded from the sky. His hands tangled in my hair. My arms wrapped around his neck. The kiss tasted like the future, uncertain but ours. Behind us, the house stood solid and warm. Around us, guards maintained their vigilant watch. Above us, stars emerged one by one against the darkening sky. Our world wasn't perfect. Danger still lurked in shadows, and the peace we'd built was fragile, requiring constant maintenance. My father remained a ghost in my life, present in monthly phone calls, but absent in every way that mattered. Giovanni's empire still operated in shades of gray that would never be entirely white. But we had this, each other, against impossible odds. Love built from drowning and resurrection, from choosing partnership over safety, from refusing to let inherited legacies define our future. When we finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, Giovanni rested his forehead against mine. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "Now we live. We build. We keep choosing each other every single day until it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like breathing. That simple? That complicated?" He corrected. "But worth it. You're worth it." I kissed him again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. In the distance, the city glittered with a million lives being lived, a million stories unfolding simultaneously. Ours was just one among countless others, but it was ours.